He was the madman who redefined rock and roll, an unlikely rock hero who became a legend with the passing of Ozzy Osbourne on July 22nd, 2025. Man, the world lost more than the Prince of Darkness. We lost one of music's most passionate, most misunderstood and enduring voices ever. Today we're celebrating Ozzy the only way that it feels right, by taking a deep dive through the songs that shaped his legacy. Because behind the bat-biting headlines was truly a man of depth, kindness, and resilience. Let's tell Ozzy's story the way it was meant to be told, through the music that changed everything, including the 3-minute filler song that made rock and roll dangerous. And the light behind the Prince of Darkness is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. If you remember watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers back-to-back, back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll find something to dig on this channel. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Man, it is truly the end of an era. Gosh, rough week, last couple weeks. Ozzy Osbourne, the metal pioneer, the beloved madman of rock and roll, passed away on July 22nd, 2025 at the age of 76. His family shared the devastating news in a heartfelt statement. Since then, of course, the tributes have flooded in from fans and friends, musicians, also his Black Sabbath bandmates. But today on this channel, we're going to pay tribute to Ozzy Osbourne the best way that I know how, through his music. I was thinking about doing an Evolution episode to celebrate his incredible career. We haven't done one yet. But the usual 5 songs just don't seem like enough. So we're doing something a little special. An Evolution episode with a twist featuring 7 essential tracks, both from his Black Sabbath days and his solo career. I'm calling the Heavenly 7, but there's more than that here. We all know Ozzy is the Prince of Darkness. We've heard all the wild stories, the antics, the controversies, and about the chaos that's followed him throughout his career. I mean, those stories are well worn. But today I want to shine a light on a different side of Ozzy. I want to speak to his qualities of kindness and resilience and his heart. These defined him just as much. So let's get started with the album that introduced the world to Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath's 1970 self-titled debut. And believe it or not, it was recorded in one day. Of course, critics hated it. They wrote the band off immediately. But here's the thing, Ozzy didn't give a crap. He didn't care. He once said, and I quote, "We were poor, we were loud, and we didn't know what we were doing, but people listened." And honestly, what else mattered? People listened because the band's raw energy and because of Ozzy's unpolished vocals that spoke to young fans who wanted something real. Sabbath was scary to some, thrilling to others, but here's my first pick, album 1, track 1, the very beginning, the band's namesake song, Black Sabbath. I'm the chosen one. Oh man, when listeners dropped the needle on that opening track, it was a dark revelation. I mean, that thunderclap, that tolling church bell, that crawling tritone riff creeping out of the speakers, it was like an ill-fated omen. It was chilling, to be sure. It sounded like the end of the world. And then Ozzy coming in with that spine-tingling line, "What is this that stands before me?" I mean, with that one question, heavy metal was born. The sheer dread in his voice, the slow building terror, it was a horror film come to life in music. That stands before me. Now, the song was originally sparked by bassist Geezer Butler, who had been dabbling in occult imagery. Not good. One night, Butler claims to have seen a dark figure at the foot of his bed, and this moment inspired the song's nightmarish lyrics. Truly one of the most chilling songs ever. Guitarist Tony Iommi, he laid down a riff so ominous, it was said to mimic the devil's interval, a diminished fifth used in classical music to signal dread and doom. Lyrically, the song dives headfirst into terror. Ozzy's vocals evoke a desperate man pleading for salvation from some demonic force. Is this the end, my friend? That's what he wailed. Geezer's lyrics, combined with the band's oppressive sound, it truly created a sonic seance of metal and mayhem. And there really was no precedent for it in rock music before or after. I mean, from that moment on, Sabbath carved out a new space in music. one that belonged to the outsiders, the outcasts. And Ozzy became their unlikely voice. Now, his voice wasn't trained, but it was real. He didn't just sing the fear. He sounded like he really felt it, every ounce of it. And that authenticity hit hard. Sabbath wasn't just a song, it was a gateway. And once you stepped through it, the world of rock music would never be the same again.
Saints coming around the bend.
1970 was a huge year for Black Sabbath. 7 months after releasing their debut album in February, they dropped their sophomore LP, one of the greatest sophomore LPs ever, Paranoid. It was on September 18, 1970 in the UK and January 7, 1971 in the US, quite a bit later in the US. The band was pushed to record a follow-up album fast. Now, many of the songs had already been penned during the debut album sessions, so the follow-up came fast, and the album, it went on to sell 4 million copies in the US, and it became their best-selling record ever. 4 million copies for a band that was truly ominous. I mean, that's amazing. The album's legacy rests on 3 cornerstone tracks, of course, Paranoid, Iron Man, and War Pigs.
Pigs have the power.
I want to mention today's sponsor. You know, as busy as we all are, one of the worst things to deal with is starting your day with no energy. And dragging along trying to keep up with your action items and actually have a personality while doing it. I mean, you know what I mean. To make sure I have what I need to have a productive day, I drink an 8-ounce glass of cold water with a scoop of AG1. AG1 supports my energy level and supports my immune system health. It also replenishes commonly underconsumed daily micronutrients like vitamin A and D, calcium, and potassium. I drink AG1 first thing in the morning and it sets the tone for the rest of my day. And all the benefits I get from drinking AG1 is actually absorbed better on an empty stomach, so there's that. I call it my scoop, shake, and drink morning ritual. I've been drinking AG1 for a couple months now, and it's made a huge difference in my personal and professional life. It's comforting to know that I'm taking good care of myself while drinking something healthy that I actually enjoy. I want to thank AG1 for sponsoring this episode of Professor of Rock. Scan the QR that you see on the screen or go to drinkag1.com/Professor of Rock to get started with AG1 for less than $3 a day. And these are my next 3 Ozzy picks, and it makes it the first time we've done an Evolution episode where 3 songs came from just the same album. But how could we not choose these? Let's get into them. Okay, the title track is originally called The Paranoid. It was written in the studio in mere minutes to fill out the album, and it was completed in about 20 minutes total. They needed 3 minutes to just finish the album. The producer said, just play something. They created a song that they all called filler, and it changed everything. Geezer Butler later recalled writing the lyrics in under 2 hours. Although the word paranoid never appears in the lyrics, the urgency in Ozzy's vocals and Iommi's riffs and the song's relentless pace gave it its fitting title. Released as the lead single in August of 1970, Paranoid became the band's breakthrough. The filler track that reached number 4 on the UK singles chart and marked their first charting appearance on the US Billboard Hot 100. It was number 61. But it also officially started Satanic Panic. You had to hide it from your parents. You had to turn it down low so they wouldn't hear. It was contraband. Man, it's just aggressive and relentlessly bleak, this song. Paranoid's been hailed as a pioneer proto-thrash track. It's a blistering sprint of dark riffs, to be sure. And right at the center of it all is Oz, delivering a vocal that drips with urgency and pain. Frontman later admitted he had no idea Paranoid would become the band's calling card. He said, it was just another song. I sang it and I forgot about it. As for our next track, oh man, Iron Man, this was a song that truly stomped all over the peace and love vibe of the late 60s. Ozzy, never one to mince words, thought the hippie movement was a bunch of crap. He thought all of them were full of crap. That's what he said. Neither he nor his bandmates were interested in mellow vibes or psychedelic daydreams. Ozzy later said that at the turn of the 70s, music still hadn't caught up with how grim the real world felt. If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear a flower in your hair, he scoffed. But that wasn't our world. We were poor kids from Birmingham. The world that the boys of Black Sabbath knew was one of factories and unemployment and cold gray skies. It was a far cry from tie-dye and summer love. Instead, they just wanted to scare the hell out of people. That was their goal. The song emerged during rehearsals across from a movie theater, an old movie theater. Tony Iommi looked and wondered, why do people like to be scared in movies? Why not with music? That mindset led to the creation of Iron Man. It was built around his monstrous riff and, of course, Ozzy's distorted intro that was recorded using a metal fan to create a robotic effect. So cool. According to Osbourne, when Tony first played the song's now iconic riff, someone in the room said that it sounded like a big iron bloke walking around. That working title stuck around for a little while, Iron Bloke. That is until Geezer wrote the lyrics. He shaped it into a dark sci-fi narrative that inspired the final name, Iron Man. Of course, when they used an Iron Man, it was so cool.
I am Iron Man.
The song tells the story of a man who travels to the future, witnesses the apocalypse, and returns to be rejected, turning into a destructive force. I mean, it's part Frankenstein, part Twilight Zone, all heavy metal monster. In no way your typical radio single, Iron Man stalled at number 52 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1972. I'm actually surprised it went that high. But it's transcended his chart performance to become a signature anthem for Sabbath. I mean, huge anthem. Decades later, a live version won Best Metal Performance at the 2000 Grammys, solidifying the song's enduring power and legacy in metal's evolution. And of course, being used in Iron Man, like I said. Bands like Metallica, Pantera, Soundgarden, and more trace their lineage back to Sabbath's blueprint, and Iron Man is one of the key influential tracks ever. Ominous and otherworldly, Ozzy's original delivery still echoes down through history. This one is chilling. Okay, so let's talk about my next Ozzy pick, War Pigs. Now, this was written during the height of the Vietnam War. War Pigs was Sabbath's furious response to political corruption and just senseless violence of that war.
The war machine keeps turning.
While the original title of the Paranoid album was supposed to be War Pigs, the label got a little squeamish about potential backlash with Black Sabbath. But the song remained, and it became the record's towering opening statement. As Ozzy explained, and I quote, "It was never about the soldiers, it was about the people sending them off to die." The track opens like a funeral procession with sludgy power chords that seem to crush the air under their weight. Then comes Geezer Butler's scathing lyrics. Generals gathered in their masses just like witches at black masses. And suddenly the song erupts into fury.
Just like witches at black masses.
It never got the credit it deserved. War Pigs is one of Black Sabbath's most ambitious and damning creations. A massive leap in both scope and message for them. Geezer's bass rumbles like incoming fire. Tony Iommi's guitar plows forward like a tank. And Bill Ward's drumming explodes like battlefield artillery. But at the center of this firestorm is Ozzy Osbourne, singing like a man possessed. I mean, his eerie high-pitched wail delivers an anti-war indictment with the urgency of a doomsday prophet. There's no room for subtlety here. It's all rage. It's all reckoning. And when the band kicks into that galloping outro, Ozzy's voice rises with manic intensity. Day of Judgment, God is calling. I mean, of all the songs that came out about Vietnam, in my opinion, this one is the greatest indictment of the casualties of war ever recorded. And of course, a lot of that was Ozzy's urgent vocal.
Day of Judgment, God is calling.
Now, War Pigs, it's a primal scream that captured the dread of an entire generation. And we're still all unsettled about it. Its legacy echoes across decades and has been covered by artists across genres and used in films and TV shows as a sonic weapon against war and corruption. It's never stopped feeling relevant, this song. Seriously, every time that ominous intro hits, it reminds all of us that the same dark forces are still out there. They're still pulling the strings, sending young men to die and fight their battles. And Ozzy's voice still cuts through the noise like a warning that we just never heeded.
Gathered in their masses.
So from 1971 to 1978, Black Sabbath released 6 more studio albums, including platinum and multi-platinum sellers, Masters of Reality, Volume 4, and Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Throughout the decade, the band experimented with orchestration, progressive rock structures, and even darker, more later production. However, Ozzy's tenure with the band, of course, came to an end in 1979 after years of mounting substance abuse. And following the release of 1978's Never Say Die, tensions truly boiled over. Ozzy had grown increasingly detached during the recording sessions, and he was ultimately fired by the other members. And of course, this marked the end of an era, but it was just the beginning of another. Ozzy would go on to launch a wildly successful solo career while Black Sabbath recruited Ronnie James Dio to usher in their next chapter. After being booted from Black Sabbath, though, Ozzy found himself holed up in a dark hotel suite in West Hollywood. And he was drowning in scotch, let's just say. I mean, Ozzy was really down. He thought his career was finished. I mean, the only real glimmer of hope was that he had this record deal with Jet Records, but he needed a band, and he needed a spark to get out of this downward spiral. Now, that spark came in the form of a young Burbank guitar prodigy named Randy Rhoads. Known for his precision and his speed, Rhoads had helped define the LA club scene with Quiet Riot already. But, inter-band conflict wore him down, and at the urging of bassist Dana Strum, he auditioned for Ozzy. Ozzy was reportedly so drunk during these auditions, though he barely remembered it. In fact, Randy Rhoads didn't even know if he wanted to be in the band. He was never a big fan of Black Sabbath, that's true. He was already in a band, but actually, Dana told him he'd give him $10 for gas money if he would go. And he had to audition like 3 different times because Ozzy was so drunk he really couldn't participate. Anyway, said Ozzy about it, and I quote, I love this quote, "I'd never formed a band of people around me, and I'd never auditioned anyone. I didn't know how to audition. My producer, Dana Strum, brought in Randy. He brought him around when I was there. I was 3 sheets to the wind. I've been drinking all day, and this little guy came in. I thought he was a girl at first. He was such a tiny guy. I said, I'm done. I've had enough of this. I want to go home. I just want to go home." But Randy did his thing. Ozzy's mind was blown, and the job was his. From then on, Rhoads became an invaluable collaborator for Ozzy, helping the singer to rise from the wreckage and live up to the rock icon that he knew he was, known as the Godfather of Metal. Which leads to my 5th Evolution pick, and how could I not pick this one? Crazy Train. Oh, what a song. Now, Crazy Train's stadium-sized riff actually started off as a sound from Randy's amp that sounded like a chugging steam engine. Bassist Bob Daisley claims he coined the name Crazy Train on the spot, and he also wrote the lyrics. Now let's talk about the lyrics, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about this song. People thinking it means something that it isn't. Crazy Train was anything but mindless mayhem. And instead of embracing chaos, Ozzy, he sang about it. How cold war paranoia and social unrest were sending the world off the rails. That's what it was about.
Crazy, but that's how it goes.
Crazy Train wasn't about Ozzy losing it. It was a call to stop the madness, a song that so many pointed to as evil or satanic, and it was about the Cold War. Despite Crazy Train's now legendary status, though, the song didn't even crack the Billboard Hot 100 when it was released. It did peak at number 9 on the Rock Tracks chart. Went to number 49 in the UK. Since then, it's become a stadium anthem. It's been streamed over 1 billion times. In fact, it's almost 2 billion. It became Ozzy's signature post-Sabbath track and became one of the biggest classic rock songs ever. It truly captured lightning in a bottle and helped Ozzy surpass the band who fired him. In fact, that's one of the first thoughts that came into my mind after I heard of Ozzy's passing. That he and Randy Rhoads are having a hell of a reunion on the other side, in rock and roll heaven, if you will. So after Ozzy came roaring back with Blizzard of Oz, he struck multi-platinum again with Diary of a Madman in 1981. That album features my number 6 Ozzy song here, Flying High Again. Man, this one's a triumphant anthem that manages to sound both euphoric and defiant. With its carefree attitude and its escalating chorus, Flying High Again became an instant fan favorite and a mainstay on rock radio. However, beneath the surface of its celebratory tone, there was a bittersweet edge to this one. Because just as Ozzy was hitting his stride, tragedy, as we all know, was looming. Randy Rhoads once again steals the spotlight on Diary of a Madman. I mean, his guitar work on Flying High Again is a perfect example of why he is one of the greatest of all time. From the song's chunky riff to the blistering solo, Rhoads fused classical finesse with volatile rock energy. Ozzy once said that Randy could take the simplest phrase and turn it into magic, which is exactly what happens on this one. Lyrically, Flying High Again plays like a rebellious taunt to anyone who's ever wanted to see Ozzy fail. Pokes fun at authority and celebrates the freedom of doing things your own way, even if that leads to self-destruction, which we know a lot about that with Ozzy. No stranger to controversy, Ozzy had been labeled everything from a lunatic to a corrupting influence.
Crazy guy you
But in Flying High Again, he wore those criticisms like a badge of honor. He wore those labels like a badge of honor. The song hit number 2 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart, and it gave fans an anthem of unapologetic nonconformity, which is what Ozzy always stood for. Flying High Again, it also reflected Ozzy's complicated state of mind in the early 80s. Now, on the surface, it's a carefree rocker, but if you listen closely, you'll realize it wasn't just boasting. Ozzy was poking fun at his public image as the reckless madman. I mean, he had lines like, "Mama's gonna worry, I've been a bad, bad boy." That played like a wink to all the critics and all the tabloids, and the media. But even as he leaned into the chaos, there was still an undercurrent of vulnerability there. A recognition that he was still figuring things out. Sadly, Diary of a Madman would be the last studio album that Ozzy recorded with Randy Rhoads before the guitarist passed away, in the 1982 plane crash. This loss devastated Ozzy. He later said he wasn't sure he'd ever fully recover from it. Still, Diary remains a vital piece of Ozzy's legacy, an album that captured the brilliance of his collaboration with Randy Rhoads and produced one of his most iconic solo tracks, Flying High Again. It's a time capsule from the peak of a powerful musical partnership and a reminder of how high Ozzy could fly with the right wingman. And Randy Rhoads, in my opinion, was the best of wingmans. Throughout the rest of the decade, Ozzy proved he wasn't going anywhere. He released Bark of the Moon in 83, there was The Ultimate Sin in 86, and No Rest for the Wicked in 88. Oz also crossed over into the pop middle mainstream with Close My Eyes Forever, that brooding duet with Lita Ford that we covered. I'll link to it below. It's actually Ozzy's highest charting single on the Hot 100, reaching number 8. By the time the decade was over, though, Ozzy's solo catalog had defined a new era of metal and had shown he was not a relic of the past. He was very much ready for the future. Actually, as he entered the 90s, he was sober, he was focused, and for the first time in a long time, he was ready to really evolve as an artist. After dodging prison time when he lost his mind that night while high and choked his wife and weathering rehab, the self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness returned with a renewed sense of purpose. He was ready to move forward. That clarity came through on 1991's No More Tears, a record that marked both a personal and truly a creative turning point for Ozzy. Rather than just rehash his heaviest impulses, Ozzy widened his scope, and the result was a surprisingly polished and melodic offering that pleased fans and critics alike. The album spent an impressive 86 weeks on the Billboard 200. It peaked at number 7 and became Ozzy's best-selling solo record in the US, going platinum 4 times, right there with Black Sabbath's biggest-selling album. With Zakk Wylde unleashing searing leads on guitar and a band that included Randy Castillo on drums and John Sinclair on keyboards and Bob Daisley on bass, Ozzy had assembled a formidable lineup. Also helping pen the lyrics to 4 of the tracks were Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead, who brought unexpected depth to this album. Produced by Duane Barron and John Purdell, No More Tears balanced brute force with an emotional weight that Ozzy had never fully embraced before. Such a great record. And nowhere was that blend more potent than on its epic 7.5-minute title track, No More Tears. My final pick of the Heavenly Seven. No More Tears it's freaking awesome. No More Tears began with a haunting bass line written by future Alice in Chains member Mike Inez, actually. It was then built into a sprawling metal ballad with anguished vocals. Oh man, it's such a great vocal on this. It also had a crushing midsection and one of Wild's most memorable solos ever. Lyrically, No More Tears touched on dark subjects like addiction and loss. Though Ozzy himself has been somewhat cagey about the exact meaning throughout the years, still the track was truly cathartic for him, and it connected with a wide audience. No More Tears climbed to number 10 on the US mainstream rock chart and remains one of Ozzy's most played tracks ever. But the album No More Tears wasn't just about that one song. It was a fully realized statement. Tracks like Road to Nowhere and Time After Time, that showed Ozzy's reflective side, while heavier cuts like Desire and Sin, S-I-N, kept the headbangers satisfied. Of course, then there was Mama, I'm Coming Home, which was just covered about a week ago. We've also covered it in depth even before that. It's one of my favorite songs. Actually, Mama is my personal favorite Ozzy song of all time. Of course, it was written as a tribute to his wife, Sharon, and it gave the album even broader emotional reach. I'm going to call this one my greatest honorable mention I've ever given.
Mama, I'm coming home.
The story goes that whenever his tour was over, he would call up Sharon, and the first thing he would say on the phone was, Mama, I'm coming home.
I've seen your face 100 times.
It's like I said the other day, it's so moving. It's almost unlistenable. It's just one of those songs. What a great song to cap off his career with. I love his performance.
But I can't stand to say goodbye.
After years of chaos with this, Ozzy was finally finding stability. In many ways, No More Tears was the album that solidified Ozzy's staying power as an artist. For Ozzy, it was more than just a comeback. It was a rebirth. Of course, more Ozzy antics and brilliance would follow throughout the 90s into the new millennium, from launching the iconic Ozfest tour, which gave a platform to both metal legends and rising stars within the genre, to even reinventing himself for a new generation with the Osbournes, the reality show. Now, by 2020, the Madman had driven his studio album count up to 12, capped off with Ordinary Man and later Patient Number 9 in 2022. Both surprisingly introspective records that found Ozzy reflecting on mortality, his legacy, and the road that was behind him. Great albums to listen to. Which, of course, brings us to the present. Ozzy Osbourne's final bow that came at Villa Park in Birmingham on July 5th, 2025. A once-in-a-lifetime back-to-the-beginning event that reunited Black Sabbath and their original lineup for the first time since 2005. Though Parkinson's disease had severely limited his mobility, Ozzy insisted on performing. Of course, seated on that custom black throne, he led Black Sabbath through classics like ones I've mentioned, War Pigs, Iron Man, Paranoid. He also delivered solo hits, including Crazy Train and Mama, I'm Coming Home. I read the bandmate Geezer Butler, he said, or commented on how fragile Ozzy was, relying on assistance and needing a cane, but describing the experience as a beautiful ending. The concert featured an all-star supporting cast. There's Metallica, and Guns N' Roses, and Slayer, and Pantera, and Alice in Chains, all influenced by the Ozman. And Jason Momoa served as the host. Ozzy kept trying to stand up when he was singing. I mean, his passion was electric. It was epic. The day was a benefit extravaganza, raising over $190 million for Cure Parkinson's, Birmingham's Children's Hospital, and Acorns Children's Hospice.
You had a good day today.
A live cinematic documentary, Back to the Beginning, Ozzy's Final Bow, that's slated for release in early 2026 to immortalize this evening. A short 17 days after that farewell concert, Ozzy Osbourne peacefully passed away on July 22nd, 2025, surrounded by his family, fulfilling a lifelong wish to bow out on stage rather than fade away behind closed doors. What a warrior. I love it. And I heard that Sharon held his hand for 2 days straight, to the point where he passed away. Now, while he was widely known as the Prince of Darkness, friends and fellow musicians, including Geezer Butler, remembered him as a complex, deeply loyal companion and a man who, despite his persona, cared fiercely for others. Ozzy's legacy stretches beyond the demons and the spectacle. He was a voice for the outsider. He was a charismatic figure who helped define heavy metal's identity. His contributions to both Black Sabbath and his solo work created some of rock's most endearing songs that captured themes of love and darkness, hope, and resilience. As his flame flickered out, his influence has only grown across generations, genres, and hearts worldwide. Ozzy was truly special. And the truth is, there'll never be another like him. I wanted to end by sharing a few stories that you may not know about the Ozman. Before I get into these personal stories about Ozzy, I do want to share something about my dad. I remember when I was I was probably 11 or 12, I was really into music. And he had this huge collection of 8-tracks. He had vinyl, but he also had 8-tracks out in his shop because he's a painting contractor and paint out there. And I remember going through his 8-tracks and finding all these titles. And I remember finding the first 3 Black Sabbath albums on 8-track. And my respect for my dad went through the roof. I was like, Dad, Black Sabbath? He's like, don't tell your mom. I mean, while my friends' fathers were listening to, Kenny Rogers in Alabama, my dad was listening to Sabbath. I just always thought that was so cool. And I remember when I got the new Ozzy album, when I got No More Tears, he was like, I want to hear that. I want to borrow that. My dad was so cool. Now, during a UK concert in 1981, a pair of teenage fans managed to sneak into a hotel bar and found themselves face to face with Ozzy and Randy Rhoads and the band. Rather than shooing them away, though, Ozzy spent over an hour chatting with these fans, answering questions, buying rounds of drinks, and even teasingly signing their foreheads. Ozzy was here. The interaction left those fans feeling like VIPs, and they still call it one of the most generous, inclusive experiences they've ever had. We all wrote Ozzy on the knuckles, right? Then in the early 80s, a teenage fan named Mark Weiss wrote a heartfelt letter to Ozzy, thanking him for his music and explaining how it helped him through the death of his father. To his shock, Ozzy actually responded to this letter. Now, Sharon arranged for the letter to reach Ozzy. He sent back a signed photo with a personalized note that said, "Stay strong, mate. I lost my dad, too. We carry them with us forever. Love, Ozzy." I love that. That wasn't all, though. A few months later, when Ozzy's tour passed through that teen city, Sharon tracked down the family and arranged for them to meet Ozzy backstage. Mark remembered Ozzy giving him a huge hug and sitting down with him, asking about his school and his family, what he wanted to do when he grew up, and really spending the time with him to get to know him. That act of kindness, that stuck with him for life. One more for you. During the No More Tears tour in the early 90s, Ozzy took a young, relatively unknown band under his wing and really looked out for him. Alice in Chains. Now, at the time, the Seattle grunge explosion hadn't yet fully peaked or happened. The band was still proving themselves on the national stage at this point. Now, Ozzy reportedly insisted on keeping them as an opener despite pressure to swap them out for a more established act. He had a lot of pressure on him to do so. Not only did Ozzy defend the band, but according to Jerry Cantrell, he often offered them advice and encouragement backstage. So in the 2013 Rolling Stone interview, Cantrell said, Ozzy was so supportive. He didn't have to be kind to us, but he was. I mean, he treated us like equals and he gave us a chance, and we'll never forget that. Ozzy would later describe their performances as incredible, and he said he loved watching them grow night after night. And of course, there was a story I told a few days ago about Ozzy helping that orphan boy who lost his mother to cancer, paying for his college and supporting him after her death. There was a lot of light in the so-called Prince of Darkness. God bless you, Ozzy.